Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about, some stuff out of the January 6th Commission, some court stuff, some more Manchin stuff, some worker empowerment stuff, lots and lots to get to. But let's start with Ivanka. The January 6th committee requesting her presence to voluntarily come and give testimony to the panel. There's no way she's going to do that. But it was a nice gesture. It's nice. I guess it's always nice to ask first. I, however, would not have asked. I think that, there's a lot she knows. Put her in the seat. Make her do the Eric. Make her plead the fifth 500 times. Or make her write it on a chalkboard. That'd be even better yet. I will not lie. I will not tell the truth. I will not say anything. Sad, sad stuff. Now, we also find out on January 6th, as I think everyone already knew, there's nothing. This is, again, anything with the previous administration, anything with the defeated former guy, nothing new here, just confirmation. And what the January 6th committee says is that they have indeed identified absolutely, positively zero information, no evidence, no information, nothing that would lead them to believe that Trump did anything on January 6th as the riot was going on for those more than 3 hours to help diffuse the situation in any way, shape, or form. In fact, as it was written, the January 6th committee says it has identified no evidence that Trump issued any order or took any other action to deploy the National Guard on January 6th, nor does it appear, they say, that Trump made any calls to DOJ or any other law enforcement agency to request deployment of their personnel. He did nothing. What we do know he did, he did tell McCarthy that, hey, those people care more about me and more about the election than you do. When McCarthy said, hey, maybe you might want to call the riot off. Maybe you might, want to do something. And, look at them fighting for me. Look at my dupes. And speaking of dupes, Rudy. Oh, Rudy. Tutti Frutti, oh, Rudy. Remember, Rudy used to be America's mayor. Rudy was the man. Rudy was Mr. New York. He was the man. Mr. Law and Order. Took down the mob. What happened to Rudy? We're now finding out, and CNN has reported, that Rudy was the guy who oversaw the illegitimate electors in the 7 states that were moving to provide fake certificates to the National Archives. Evidently, what they're reporting is that Giuliani and his allies coordinated the nuts and bolts of the process on a state-by-state level. They say that one source said there were multiple planning calls between Trump campaign officials, and GOP state operatives. The source also said the Trump campaign lined up supporters to fill elector slots, secured meeting rooms in state houses for the fake electors to meet on December 14th, 2020, and circulated drafts of fake certificates. This, again, not a lawyer. I don't even pretend to be one. But just common sense says this sounds a lot like a conspiracy. This sounds like a plot. This sounds like a coup attempt. It sounds like all of those things that we've been saying for a very long time. It seems like the defeated former guy. I don't know. I'll tell you, at the beginning, there's no way Trump's going to go to jail. There's no way he's going to be held accountable because it's not what we do in this country. We haven't held any past elected officials at the presidential level accountable for anything in my lifetime. I guess Nixon, I was a small child. He resigned. Were we going to impeach him? Yeah, probably. Would he have gone to jail? Doubt it. I would like to see someone held accountable. And this gives me some bit of hope because there's so much now compiling on top of everything that you can't ignore it anymore. And I'm hoping that all of this information, even my MAGA hat wearing Q nuts, I don't know how you can look at this and go, yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't know how you do that. Because if you're okay with it for the Trumpkins, if you're okay with it for Rudy to do it, you got to be okay with it if Joe Biden decides, you know what, if he got away with it, why can't I? Not that Biden and the Democrats would ever, but you never know. If it's now the norm, if this is how things are now done, if this is now how we've split apart so far that we can't agree on, when an election is certified at the state level, it's certified. You don't get to make up and dream up your own electors. You don't get to come around and go, no, we have our alternative electors. You don't get to do that. Which is why I think, these people should have been arrested a year ago. But that's just me. Speaking of arrested, Representative Jamal Bowman, New York, arrested today at the Capitol during a voting rights protest. And look, have you been to jail for justice? This is a guy saying, look, voting rights is so important that I'm willing to get arrested and go to jail for it. This the kind of urgency I'd love to see from the Democratic Party. How about getting out of your shells? How about getting out of your towers? How about getting out of your bubbles? Get out in the street and get arrested. Make the system uncomfortable. Because here's my problem. We're in this world where we believe, we can have bipartisanship. We can all just hold hands and get along. No, it's never been that way. There have been things we've agreed on. There have been things that we can agree on, and we can definitely work forward. But understand, this fantasy of bipartisanship and unity on every issue is just that, a fantasy, especially when you're talking about anything economic. This idea that we can have win-win relationships. This is a win-win, Rick. It's a win-win. No, there are always winners and there are always losers. No, we could both do well. There are places where people lose less, but there are always winners and losers. In our economic system right now, the way it has been manipulated by our political elites, the winners are the handful of people at the top who are buying these politicians and are funding these campaigns and funding all of these attack ads and these euphemistically named attack groups like Americans for Dogs and Puppies. I saw one the other day, and I'm just going, who is this crazy group and where'd they come from? Pennsylvanians for Hope and Change. It's insane. And the winners, that's what they do. They cause this division. And the losers, we end up fighting each other and blaming each other. And in the process, nothing gets done in our halls of power. Nothing. And then they just go blame each other. Right now, everyone's blaming Manchin and Sinema, and rightfully so. Especially Manchin, because I think Manchin has empowered Sinema. But there should be a functional Republican or two, because overwhelming, if you look at the polling numbers on the monthly check for people with kids to help alleviate childhood poverty, extremely popular, over 65%. Dealing with climate change, extremely popular, over 55%. You go through what's in this Build Back Better plan. Wildly popular investments in a social safety net and healthcare and education and things that things we've needed for decades. But because we've had the Senate, who's been the place where all reasonable thought and good policy go to die, this stuff has been just basically ignored for decades. And now Biden's like, hey, this is a moment. This is a moment for real change. a real opportunity to make the lives of working people better in the Manchins of the world, not happy. Now, yesterday you had Manchin, basically tanking the voting rights aspect. I don't know what we're going to get done on that. Even though Manchin himself says he wants to do something, he's still living in this fantasy island world of, Republicans are going to come along. No, they're not. Because they understand the way things are right now, the status quo benefits them. They are the winners. They're never going to acquiesce to the losers who, oddly enough, have the power to change the dynamics, but choose not to because of this fantasy that, well, the people on the other side, they're good people who care about democracy. Fundamental flaw. You can't deal with terrorists. You can't deal with people who despise you. And I look at this Build Back Better thing, and I have been a supporter of it from the beginning. I believe it's something we need as a country. It's investments in healthcare and climate change and a social safety net, pre-K, all kinds of great stuff. All kinds of great stuff. Started off at around $6 trillion. Could have been, that's a bit much, but not unnecessary. Then they brought it down to about 3.5, and then we were just arguing about numbers. And Manchin had come in at like 1.5, at 1.8. Now he's saying, very predictably, nothing. We're going to start back at a blank sheet of paper. We're right back at the beginning. And do you know where right back at the beginning gets us? It gets nothing done. There'll be lots of talking. There'll be lots of bickering and arguing, and Joe Manchin feeling really important because he's now the center of attention again. But we're not going to get anything done. And that's the fear I have in this. Now, if I'm the Democrats, I go, fine, write the bill you think you're going to get 10 Republicans to come and give us bipartisanship on. Write that bill for us. Write what you think is going to get you 10 votes. Oh, wait a second. We tried that with the voting rights. You wrote the bill that you believed were going to get 10 Republicans to come along. And guess how many did? Well, yesterday's vote was 48 to 52. 48 Democrats against 50 Republicans and 2 Democrats. Did not even get, all 50 Democrats to want to push that legislation forward. Interesting. Interesting times in which we live in. And this is the scary part of this. And look, we desperately need the Voting Rights Act part of it. Desperately. You look at Mitch McConnell yesterday, and I thought it was hysterical because he got beat up a lot verbally, and rightfully so. He said that, what was the exact quote? He said, the concern is misplaced because if you look at statistics, African-American voters are voting at just as high a percentage as Americans. So everyone took that as Mitch McConnell saying that African-Americans aren't Americans, and that's what he said, really. It is what he said. It's not I don't think it's what he actually meant. I personally don't, I'm not going to call him a racist. I don't know whether he is or he isn't. I know that he's not fond of black voters, but he's not fond of poor voters either, especially if they vote for Democrats. But if you do look at the numbers and you do look at the voter participation, white voters do a little bit better. The last election saw non-Hispanic white voters voting at the participation rate at about 71%. Black voters at 63%. That was a little bump from the last election. That was, had 60%. But down from the high of 2012, where black voters came in at 67%. A little bit down. Now understand, it's not about suppressing the vote of all black voters, just those key ones in key states where you can, siphon off 20, 30,000 votes and make sure that those people don't vote so you win by a couple of votes. Now we're in this place where, according to the Brennan Center for Justice, they are a nonpartisan, strictly a policy group affiliated with New York University School of Law. They said in 2021, 19 states passed 34 restrictive laws restricting access to voting. And I wonder who those were targeted toward. Because you don't need all black voters not to be able to vote, just enough. And if you go back and you look at all of the presidential elections since 2000, and I would argue even before, but especially since 2000. 2000, you had Jeb Bush, governor. You had Katherine Harris, the Secretary of State. They hired this company, Choice Point, to come in and purge the voter rolls of some 90,000 people who had names that sounded like felons. Turns out, those 90,000 voters, well, overwhelmingly people of color. Now, I'm not one who's going to jump on the, everything's white supremacy and everything's about race. But when it is what it is what it is. When Ricky Jackson, and there are 100 of them, get purged from the voting rolls, and none of them are felons, but hey, there was one who didn't register to vote, you kind of go, they've rigged it. And that's how they won Florida, because it was only a couple hundred votes. 90,000 votes were purged even before the first vote was cast. So they rigged it before it even started. 2004, fast forward to there. Ohio, my favorite state, the J. Kenneth Blackwell with the 80-pound paper. We're not taking registrations from poor people unless it's on 80-pound paper. Knowing that, a lot of people were doing a lot of organizing to get people voting. They were able to throw thousands of votes out. And the caging that went on. Caging went on in Ohio and Florida, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania. What are all those? Those are all battleground states where if you can just shave enough of the vote, you might be able to take that state. And that's great. They send you a letter, say, hey, if you don't respond to this letter, we're kicking you off the voting rolls. Do not forward. And they kicked a bunch of people off the voting rolls. 2012, we get voter ID. Now, 2008, I didn't even talk about that because John McCain didn't stand a chance thanks to George W. Bush. But they did try. But 2012 was voter ID. And then 16 and 20, it's been all about the purge. Hundreds of thousands of voters in Georgia purged off the voting rolls because, well, they didn't vote in a couple of elections. And then all of these people seeking to throw people off the voting rolls, hired by the wealth class to do it. And you wonder why I keep saying we're in a moment of crisis. And to see Jamal Brown saying, I'm going to go to jail for it, that to me shows a sense of urgency. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back and talk a little bit about what's going on out in Denver as UFCW workers are on strike. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day the Flint Women's Emergency Brigades were founded. Janora Johnson, a socialist, was a main leader of the Women's Auxiliary No. 10 throughout the strike. A different kind of auxiliary, it built the leadership skills of women through classes in labor history and public speaking. It also set up a first aid station and child care center, raised strike funds, and walked the picket lines. The Women's Auxiliary was transformed through its actions at the Battle of Bull Run when the women put their bodies between the strikers and the police. According to Janet Hazzett, the women moved beyond supporting the strike to participating in it. 50 women signed up the next day. By the end of the strike, over 300 women had joined. The women adopted an official uniform of red berets and red armbands. They were armed with clubs to smash factory windows when police gassed the sit-downers. Their participation in the strike was heroic, and their work continued after the victory. They sought to represent the interests of women auto workers, who often found co-workers less than welcoming and experienced sexual harassment and occupational discrimination at the hands of supervision. Many women auto workers formed the core leadership of several chapters. Historian Nancy Gabin notes that this was not always the appropriate arena for advocacy, saying, quote, by encouraging women workers to participate in the auxiliaries, the UAW abdicated its responsibility to these workers. However, Johnson emphasized, it was a radical change to give women a right to participate in discussions with their husbands, with other union members, with other women, to express their views. That was a radical change for those women at that time. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, as we've been talking about, some 8,500 grocery workers out in Colorado on strike. Kroger-owned King Super is the company that they're striking. And, again, you look at the information that's come out, and good on the UFCW and the fact that they actually care about their members, where they went and they actually did a survey to find out how many of our members are struggling, how many people are struggling with food insecurity, potential homelessness, and then going back to the table and saying, hey, we need to make things better. This is how it's supposed to work. This is how we close the inequality gap. This is how we make lives better. As I always say, union job, better life. It's that simple. That's why I've asked Kim Cordova to come talk with us. Kim is the president of UFCW Local 7. She represents workers in Colorado and Wyoming. She's the one leading this strike of these 8,500 grocery workers. Kim, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. So,
let's start in the first place. Let's start with, because there's so much to get to here. Let's start with this survey that the UFCW did of grocery workers for Kroger's across the country. These numbers, were they shocking to you? The fact that, 3/4 of the workers face food insecurity? People who work in a grocery store don't have enough to eat. That's insane to me. Were you surprised by the outcome of that?
Well, actually, we're very in touch with our membership, and so we knew that there were issues in the store because, we're with them shoulder to shoulder every day while we're servicing members. But we wanted to survey them, not just here in Colorado, but in other parts of the country, to really confirm and lend credibility to what we were saying. I mean, we wanted workers to tell their story so that also when we were drafting proposals, that we had, that we actually went out and investigated this, what workers were saying. We wanted them to we do contract surveys, what they wanted to see in their contract. But before we did that, we wanted to know what they were feeling, what experiences they had, so that we could address them in this bargaining cycle. But yes, I think what I was surprised about it wasn't just Colorado, and it showed that within this grocery industry, there's systemic problems that grocery workers were facing.
Yeah, I mean, some of the numbers are just outrageous. Like 14% of the workers working in a place are homeless. And you go, how is that possible in a union job environment? And I'll tell you, it's heartbreaking to me because my grandmother was worked in a small department store in Cleveland, was a UFCW Local 880 member for 25 plus years. And I got to see how that union made her life and the lives of her coworkers better. So this is kind of heartbreaking to see in this moment. Things kind of sliding a little bit backward, which is kind of disheartening to me.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, as president of the union, we've seen that these big companies change their business model and practices. And we've seen what happened when they created a two-tier system. What happened when they went from full-time middle-class wage earners to now low-paid part-time jobs, where we see workers that cannot afford to live even in the city in which they work. And what's so disgusting about all of this is that they work for one of the largest employers in the country. So Kroger, the parent company of King Soopers, is the largest biggest grocer, most market share in the United States. And that holds true in Denver, Colorado. They're the largest grocer. And you've seen the company, while for us, this is an out-of-state company that owns this, this division now. While our members are doing all the heavy lift and doing the work every day as an essential worker, and our customers are coming in spending millions and millions of dollars a week on groceries, pharmaceuticals, stuff like that. All of that profit is not, shared with the workers or our communities. It's taken back to Wall Street. And so big corporate executives are thriving while the frontline worker is suffering. And we shouldn't accept that.
Not at all. It seems to be the American way. Now, the CEO of Kroger, as I was reading through some of the information, even worse than most of the other ones are bad. something like 900 times the median wage of the average worker in that works for Kroger. That's what he's putting in his pocket. A guy who's never bagged a bag of groceries or scanned anything or stocked a shelf, that never helped me at the supermarket. Are you kidding? This guy's lining his pockets 900 times what someone who's almost homeless is making. That's insane to me.
Well, they're living the American dream. They're living the American dream off of these workers while our workers are suffering. And so what happened with COVID too is it just really showed the two Americas we live in. Those that, do all the work and while the other half thrive. And, when small businesses shut down, when we had our state shut down for COVID, restaurants, small businesses shut down, and this business, Kroger came out, called their workers essential heroes as an essential business, which we agree. Grocery stores are, grocery workers work during any man-made or natural disaster. But then, they own an essential business, helped shut down, there were businesses that lost everything, restaurants that lost everything. And the company thrived and they got richer off of our backs. And you know what our members got? Our members got COVID. Our members got COVID. They got, spit on, slapped, pushed, beat up by people that are frustrated. And, consumers that came in, look at what happened with the toilet paper craziness that people were panic buying at the beginning of COVID. And I will tell you, there's not in these grocery stores, there's not a big supply chain issue. There's a worker shortage in this country. And COVID really changed people's perspective. Workers, it's like they got a new pair of glasses. Or
absolutely. I've been saying that about everybody. Nobody wants to put up with this garbage anymore. I'm right there with you. But your members, they're heroes, though. We gave them that wonderful title. Isn't that enough?
No, because if you're an essential worker, you need to be paid, respected, and protected as an essential hero.
No, I'm right there with you.
All they did was jump on some PR bandwagon so that they didn't take the heat for all the other restaurants and businesses that were closed down while they were making money, more money than I think Kroger's ever made in their existence. And it's just like they filed a restraining order on the strikers right now. The same people, they were putting billboards up and running commercials as essential heroes. And now they put a restraining order on them for being a picketer, for standing up. I mean, this company is so, their approach is so backwards, but it's what we're seeing across the country, not just in this sector, but in private and public sector jobs all over. And, this is why the Great Resignation is real. This is why workers are saying, you know what, I'm tired of dead-end jobs. I'm tired of making money for everybody but myself off my back, and I'm not living the American dream. That's why workers are standing up. And I'm so proud of our workers for doing that survey. That was a lot of personal information for them to share.
Yeah, well, in that survey, in the last, because I want to get to the other stuff real quick, but in the survey, anything in there that surprised you? And then I guess the other question is, now that we have this leaked memo from Kroger that basically lays out that they knew all of the stuff that was in this memo too, and have chosen not to make it any better. I'm curious how you put the two documents together.
Again, I think it lends credibility to what's happening. I mean, it really shows that Kroger, as this giant box chain company that has, a lot of power where they can strong arm, from a legal standpoint, I don't know if you can say it's a monopoly, but they definitely own so much of this space, right, in this type of industry, that they can control a lot of things. They have a lot of political power with states, and that can take their stores elsewhere. Look at what happened in California and in Seattle when workers went to the state legislature to fight for hazard pay. When they stripped hazard pay for all of us around the country, they just shut stores down. They don't care about communities. They don't care about their frontline worker. What they care about is their friends on Wall Street.
No, you are so spot on right. And this is where, again, I come back to how broken and badly broken our labor laws are in this country, that we can't hold these kind of criminal, what I would argue are criminal acts, closing down a store over something like that. We can't hold these folks accountable. But on this last thing, because I want to highlight this, you guys had this report that laid out all of this incredible information about food insecurity and homelessness and hunger and, people living paycheck to paycheck and on the verge of bankruptcy, and Kroger knowing it as well, knowing that a large number of their workers are getting food stamps and school lunch programs and assistance, and being okay with that and abusing the system. And this is where I think we as a community have to get angry at these companies who are abusing the system, that the social safety net that we have, to subsidize their workers when they could easily pay a living wage, which is why I think the community needs to be drawn into this, especially now, as you pointed out, they've got this restraining order against you, only 10 people on a picket line because maybe some member said a thing about somebody crossing their picket line. That's insane to me, and this is why we need better laws. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about, is it an injunction or just a restraining order?
Right now, it's a temporary restraining order. We're going to appeal it. I will tell you, I've been in bargaining across from their division president and their corporate executives since Friday, every single day. And prior to them filing the lawsuit, they never once raised any issues around picket conduct. What they're mad about is that 8,700 of their workers walked out. And let me tell you, prior to us pulling the pickets, workers have said, enough is enough. They're jumping in on the Great Resignation. And before we even entered into negotiations, we've seen mass turnover in these stores. And in fact, they had 2,400 workers quit on them. And there were job openings in those stores before we went on strike. And so between 2,400 workers, and you have strike authorization votes between 98% to 100% of the workers voting in favor of or authorizing the strike. It's very telling of what was happening within this company. And so workers, and the company knew. The company purposely drives down wages that way so that they could avoid paying into these pension plans and health plans by keeping a revolving door. And again, like I said, one of the things they're trying to do to these picketers is also, not just filing this restraining order, but their public campaign they're taking with their political friends and with their allies in the media. They're painting a picture that these workers, how dare them, the audacity to ask for a living wage, the audacity to try to share in the company's incredible success, the very people that they deemed a hero just a few months ago during COVID. But the other thing they're doing is they're saying, blaming workers for wanting to have a thriving wage, that the worker is going to be responsible for the rising cost of groceries. But they're not saying anything that when the company's getting a $1.5 billion worth of stock buybacks, or their CEO having massive wage increases, 21%, $21 million raise in 1 year. I mean, we shouldn't, as a community or labor movement, give that CEO a pass to go ahead and get rich and fat off of these workers, and then try to villain, they're making them the villain, and somehow this big company's the victim in all of this.
Which is why they're trying to silence you on the front lines, because I don't know about your supermarkets, but our local supermarkets, we know the people who work there. They're our neighbors, they're our friends, they're people that we know. And this is where, with this kind of restraining order, I would love to see all 8,500 members of your union and all 8,500 to 15,000 of their friends, their family, their friends, thousands of people descend on these places and say, you know what, the community's behind this in a massive show of solidarity. It's the kind of thing I would love to see us get back to.
Well, that's part of the restraining order. So these picket lines are huge. Some of these grocery stores have up to 300 workers. And so they came out. We have not had workers scab. There was massive consensus on what was going on, and the workers took charge. This is their union. They stepped up and they stepped off the line, but that restraining order says that it's against anybody acting in concert with the worker. And the people on our lines are our neighbors, our friends, our community, our labor partners, teachers, students. We have faith leaders on our community, on our picket lines. And the picket lines are huge. We're happy to send any photos so you can see it. I mean, this is the largest strike in our state. And it might be one of the largest strikes going on in the country right now. And we can pull other stores into this. We just started with those stores, and this strike can grow, and we can send these pickets out to other states as well.
No, this is one of those moments where, and Kroger needs to know this. This can get worse, or this can get better. And the hope is that you guys get back to the table, that you continue to negotiate, you win a good contract for your members, and make lives better. Because after all, a job is supposed to make your life better, not just a living hell.
Well, yeah, I don't think anybody when they were a little kid at night, dream of being a grocery worker. They're there because they want to make ends meet. And there's no shame. The company's trying to shame them that, how dare them? They're painting this picture that these workers are uneducated, high school age people that work here. That's not true. Seniority matters. These were before Kroger, this big company took over. Yeah, how dare them? How dare them come in? Because I'll tell you right now, these workers are so damn good that they made this company more money than they've ever made. And they try to paint this picture in the media that somehow they're the serfs of their kingdom, and how dare them ask to share in the company's incredible success.
I don't care what your education level is. Every job is deserving of respect. Every job is deserving of dignity. And we measure dignity and respect. And can you support your family? Can you keep a roof over your head? Can you have a little economic security with a little health security and a little retirement security? That isn't too much to ask for. What I find too much to ask for is a company whose CEO makes over $20 million a year, massive amounts of stock buybacks, wealthier than they've ever been, forcing you guys into this situation. I hope you'll continue to come back and tell us what's going on. Keep us up to date. Keep up the fight. And I hope the community, look, I'd love to see 10, 20,000 people out there. You can't arrest everyone. A court system can't throw everyone in jail. This is where I think community support is so vital in this. And Kim, I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thank you. I sure appreciate the conversation. We need to keep talking about this and keep fighting for workers across this country.
Outstanding. By all means, I hope you'll come back and talk to us numerous times as this goes on. And I hope it's a short strike. And as I've said a million times, and you guys have heard me say it before, I am not someone who's let everyone go on strike. No one wants to do it. It is the last arrow in the quiver. But when you do it, you got to win it. You got to be in it to push and to fight and to struggle to win. And I'm with these workers. Anything I can do to help. If you want to check out their website, UFCWlocal7.org. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at that. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1986. That was the first time Dr. Martin Luther King Day was observed as a national holiday. A powerful voice for civil rights, Dr. King was assassinated in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, while standing on the second floor of the Lorraine Motel. He was in Memphis standing up for the rights of black garbage collectors. Dr. King gave his life supporting those fighting for union recognition. Throughout his work as a civil rights leader, Dr. King spoke powerfully of the importance of unions. Addressing a group of Teamsters in 1967, he said, "Union recognition meant the real beginning. Union meant strength, and recognition meant the employer's acknowledgement of that strength." Perhaps his most stirring reflections on the labor movement came in a speech he delivered to the AFL-CIO in Springfield, Illinois in 1965. King said, "The two most dynamic movements that reshaped the nation during the past 3 decades are the labor and civil rights movements. Our combined strength is potentially enormous. We have not used a fraction of it for our own good or for the need of society as a whole. If we make the war on poverty a total war, if we seek higher standards for all workers for an enriched life, we have the ability to accomplish it, and our nation has the ability to provide it. If our two movements unite their social pioneering initiative 30 years from now, people will look back on this day and honor those who had the vision to see the full possibilities of modern society and the courage to fight for their realization. On that day, the brotherhood of man, undergirded by economic security, will be a thrilling and creative reality.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
The fun times for the defeated former guy. The dumbest kid. And I'm at this point now where I'm going, is Eric really the dumbest kid? Although, pled the fifth 500 times. See, that should have been televised. And this is what I want to see. I want to see all of these criminals, all of them, from my Congressman Scott Perry on up. I want to see them all on TV pleading the fifth. It's their right to do. They can do it. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want them to incriminate themselves, but we should be able to see it. And we should be able to see every one of those 500 times. Just my thoughts. But here to talk about what kind of a week it's been for the defeated former guy, and, well, what the future is starting to look like. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah's a reporter over at RawStory, rawstory.com, the website where you can check out all of her fantastic work. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, happy Thursday.
So not a good week for the Trump crime syndicate.
It's a terrible, bad, not so very good week for the Trump family. And it started with, gosh, we've had so many of them now, but it was, we had the January 6th commission sent out a whole new round of subpoenas that included Ivanka Trump. We found out because it's, there are so many different things that
was she subpoenaed? I thought I thought there was a request to bring her in.
It was a request first, and then there's going to be a subpoena because she's going to, so far her first response was, well, I don't know why you're requesting me because I tweeted out that people should stop being violent on that day. And it's like, really? Is that what you think that they're subpoenaing you for? Oh, honey, no. Like, actually read the letter. The rest of us did, so you should read it. There's another thing with the Supreme Court. Obviously, last night he lost his Supreme Court challenge to try and stop, over 700 different documents from being turned over to the January 6th committee. And this is everything that involves the election overthrow and January 6th. So it's everything from phone calls, text messages, schedules, speech drafts, which I think is important. If they have a speech draft that shows that Trump wasn't supposed to say, come and, we're going to go we're going to march to the Capitol, and he just made that there on the spot, then that sort of pigeonholes him as being in on this thing. So yeah, there's that. And then there's the whole, they've impaneled a grand jury in Fulton County for his voter fraud stuff because he asked the Secretary of State to find him the vote. New York Attorney General came out with an addition to her case. It's a 115-page addition that basically walks through all of the evidence that they have up until this point, and that's where it really starts getting bad for the family. That's where Eric Trump gave the 6-hour deposition where he just kept saying, I plead the fifth. And that's also where Ivanka is implicated because she made a lot of misstatements on some loan applications, which you're not supposed to do. That's also going to get Don Jr. in trouble too. So
it seems like they're all not having a great week. But I look at Eric and look, maybe it's just I look at him and I feel sorry for him because he doesn't seem like he's all there most of the time. And I think pleading ignorance would have been better than pleading the fifth? Because I don't think he knows.
I wonder. It's hard because even if let's say you're not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but you should have a basic understanding of right and wrong, right? Like you would think that at least, maybe not from Trump raising him, but certainly from his mother, you would think that he would know the difference between what is right and what is wrong. And he knew not to answer those questions. He knew that something that they were asking could incriminate him, which means that he knows that those things were illegal and that it would be bad if people found out about them.
Yeah,
So at the very least, his lawyers have explained to him, like, do not say a word, and he's followed it.
I think they've explained the concept of jail.
Yeah, right? You would think at this point. I mean, and this is a multi-state conspiracy. I know that they've really focused on New York because it's the New York Attorney General, but he has a golf course in Los Angeles where he was basically he tried to commit tax fraud by selling an easement of the property that couldn't be developed, and selling it for conservation. And he sold it for like $25 million that he could get back in taxes. And it turns out that the land wasn't worth $25 million. Right? Like and it was like coastal, and there was erosion, and they had like a geologist come in and they think falsified some records there. And there's letters and interviews with the appraisers. There was a draft. This is one of my favorites. There's a draft in an appraiser's email box, like an under, deputy of somebody who was basically told, don't send, any emails about anything. We're not putting anything in writing. So she didn't send the email, but it sat in her draft section, basically saying, if something funny is going on here, there's something wrong here.
Whoops.
And it's very clear that she saw that something was not right. And she didn't send the email because they told her not to, but she didn't delete it either.
Yeah, lots of fun on that front. Also today we find out that Rudy Giuliani was part of the alternative certificates, if you will, that they sent to the National Archive. And look, I remember back in December of 2020 hearing these stories that they were going to convene these meetings and that they were going to submit, and they were all stories that were going on. At the time, we didn't know that they actually submitted them. I'm curious why in January of 2021, people weren't being arrested for putting those out, because if you're the National Archives, you got the real ones, the ones that are authentic, yep. And then you got the fake ones, the fraudulent ones. Right then, that should have been the guy who sent me this. He gets a shiny new set of handcuffs.
Exactly. So this is a form that whenever you have a set of electors that, everybody votes, those electors then meet together and say, yes, we're taking the popular vote of the state, and these are who the electors are. You sign your name on this thing and ends up in this basic form letter that gets sent off to Congress. That's what ends up in that big wooden box that, somebody grabbed before the insurrection happened and went out the door. That all of those lists of people, what the Trump campaign tried to do is get these alternate electors, these Republicans who are trying to get into those meetings so that they could fight against the Democratic electors and get their forms signed. In Michigan, like, they shut them out. They wouldn't even let them in the Capitol building. In other states, they just didn't really try that hard. But what was very interesting is that the forms that these fake electors signed off on and sent to the National Archives, they all look exactly the same font, the same text, everything is exactly the same. And it turns out it's because that form came from one person. And it just happens to be a lawyer who said that he was representing the Trump campaign.
Oops. Oops.
So there you go.
I wonder if they're going to find it on one of his computers that he may have left around somewhere. And this is where you keep going, how you go, how stupid are they? And you go, the reality is these are people who feel they're above the law, and none of it would matter. They did all of their criming in public. They wanted people to know that they were criming because they wanted to legitimize and normalize that level of criming.
There are some people, I mean, the thing with Donald Trump is that I think his father really instilled in him the value of don't put anything in writing, don't email anything, and but no one else around him follows that. And, you know, it's fine if, you know, you're the one who knows not to do it, but everybody around you is basically just writing down what you're saying. Like, that's not helping you. No. And that's basically what has happened in this case, is that all of these other fraud cases and weird bankruptcy cases and everything with Donald Trump, he's got away with so much because there's no document to prove it. Now there are receipts. Everybody has receipts, many copies of receipts. Yep. And that's what's ultimately going to, you know, be the end of it, is people recorded stuff, people put things in writing. The thing about the White House is everything is written down and everything is archived. It's part of, you know, the transparency of the office. And Trump's just...
And you've got all those people from January 6th who recorded everything. They got their videotapes of their treason. I mean, that's the great part of all of this. You can't lead a coup and not have it written down. And there's part of me that goes to people who, again, that were part of this. They wanted their place in history. This is that kind of vanity that they wanted to be remembered for being the patriots who were going to water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and patriots. They were going to be those people, only now you don't see them now stepping up and saying, yeah, I did that.
Yeah, you really don't. And a lot of people who were live streaming that or posting pictures and they were proud of it, sure deleted stuff very quickly. They just didn't delete it before a lot of people took screen captures, or the FBI downloaded some stuff. And I mean, you can go through all of those videos, and the FBI documents and files are all online because they're still looking for a lot of people. There's a whole page where you can go through and help the FBI figure out who some of these folks are.
Yeah, and there's someone who before they shut Parler down got all of the Parler, I don't know what you called them, parles or tweets. What did you call those? Post? I guess post. Got everything that they posted on Parler. So that's going to be on record for all of eternity. So the good thing is generations from now, the great-great-grandchildren, this could be the new South of the future. This could be the new Confederacy. You know, 100 years from now, you're going to get idiots erecting statues to dumb people with their Twitter accounts and their Parler accounts going, that was my great-grand-grandpappy. Yes, sirree. He was right there with the treason.
People done called him the zip tie guy. Or my grandpappy was the vegan, vegetarian dude who wore that helmet with the horns on it.
He was the shaman
yelling from the balcony. He dang near was a shaman, even though he ain't no Native American.
Yes, sirree. Yes, sirree, Bob.
Sorry?
But I swear, I mean, isn't that what we've done with the Confederacy? You had all those groups who came and, you know, we're going to proud of our treason. We're going to fly the flag. We're going to put up monuments. You can see it. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Sarah Burris. Sarah's a reporter at RawStory, rawstory.com, the website, if you want to take a look at the work that she does. Now, you got a piece on these, you know, the people who were the ones recording themselves doing the January 6th stuff, and the influencers of the defeated former guy. I'm guessing they're having a little problem on the new platforms because, you know, some of the new stuff has popped up. How are they doing over there? Are they now influential, or are they now not crazy enough for the new crazy sites?
Well, what's interesting is if you're on a website where there are not 100 million people, you know, there's only like 5 million people, your options of bringing in a huge following are very slim because there's only a couple million people. So these folks who are huge right-wing conservative influencers like Mike Lindell and Sidney Powell and those folks, you know, when they hop on these channels, they might have a huge influx of people, but, you know, because those sites have basically become known as a right-wing QAnon conspiracy silo, nobody's really joining those sites anymore. So their followings are just sort of trickling downward. And, you know, they're just not getting the kind of traction that they would on massive sites like YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, but that's where they're getting banned.
Aw, so sad.
Don't break the terms of service, man.
Now, when does Truth Social come out? I'm still waiting for Truth Social. I know Devin Nunes left Congress to become the head of the whatever that is going to be. Are we going to start truthing soon, and then retruthing, and then re-retruthing, and then eventually, if you retruth something enough, does it become a lie? I'm just curious.
That's an excellent question. There are a lot of weird things that are going on with Truth Social that make me wonder if it's ever actually going to happen, because there's some weird sort of investor stuff with a sketchy dude who put up like $1 billion to make this thing happen. Trump was like selling phone calls and speeches to foreign leaders trying to get money for this thing, which you have to wonder, like, was he really trying to get money for this thing, or is he trying to pay off his legal bills, or like what's really going on here? Is this basically just, venture capital for Trump's slush fund and legal funds? And I don't know the answer to that, but the SEC is definitely looking into the major donor from China to make sure all of that was above board. So we'll see what happens with the other strange, for $100 million, I'll give you a call and tell you how pretty you are.
All I want to see is Devin Nunes sue Donald Trump for not being paid. That's all I want to see. I know,
right? Oh my God.
Because you know it's coming.
So good.
You know it's coming. Finally, I wanted to get your thoughts on Madison Cawthorn. Evidently, he was playing with his tool during a Zoom meeting. His gun. He's had his gun out. John Field, who we've had on this program, 9/11 hero, first responder, great guy. He was clearly not happy. Said it was immature. He's a child, lacks common sense. He's overcompensating. Thoughts?
Well, yeah, he's definitely overcompensating. This is a guy who lied to people and made it seem like he became handicapped because he was in the war, when the dude was just in a car accident and never even actually served in any form in the military. He's not a truth teller. He should not sign up on the Truth Social. So the idea that this guy needs to build himself up as this big, strong man who is a military man, and he's cleaning his gun and all of that stuff. It is immature, and it's little man syndrome. That's all I can say is that I look at this dude and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, if you're on the Veterans Affairs Committee, which is where this was, it was during a committee hearing on Veterans Affairs and how toxic chemicals are killing U.S. soldiers. If you're sitting there stroking your gun, I don't think you're paying attention to what's going on. And really, it seems, well, I guess it seems like something that Madison Cawthorn would do. So I guess I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and honestly, nobody who lied about, pretended to be in the military should even be able to be on Veterans Affairs.
I don't disagree with that either. But Sarah, I appreciate the time as always. Fabulous stuff. Hope people take a look at the website, rawstory.com. That's where you can find Sarah Burris's work. She does amazing stuff. Sarah, as always, great stuff.
Thank you. Have an awesome weekend, everybody.
You as well, our good friend Sarah Burris. Remember, rawstory.com. Check out her work. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You'll listen to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. This date marked one of the deadliest workplace disasters in Chicago history. It took place a little over a mile offshore near 71st Street on Lake Michigan. A group of predominantly Irish laborers were working on a tunnel to bring fresh water to the city's growing south side. The work was grueling, and the conditions were frigid and dangerous. Workers were paid as little as $1 to $2 a week for their labor. On this date, the workers were housed in a wooden crib on the lake. For reasons unknown today, a fire broke out in the workers' sleeping quarters. It was rumored at the time that someone had sprinkled gasoline around to ward off bed bugs, but no cause was ever confirmed. The fire quickly consumed the wooden dormitory that housed the tunnel workers, leaving the men with little choice but to begin jumping into the freezing lake and climb onto ice floes. one man was able to make a frantic telephone call to the offshore office, relaying the message, the crib is on fire. For God's sake, send help at once or we'll be burned alive. The tug! And the line went dead. Accounts vary, with estimates between 40 and 70 men dying from the fire and drowning. The exact number is uncertain, because many of the workers were day laborers and migrant workers. Little information about their identities remains. Some of the bodies were never recovered. Some that were found were buried at Mount Greenwood Cemetery, where a plaque reads, "In memory of crib fire, 45 unknown men, January 20th, 1909. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment, you want to chime in on something. I'm going back to my conversation with Kim Cordova of UFCW Local 7 out in Colorado. In fact, they got 8,500 people on strike, and it is a big strike, one of the bigger ones in the country right now. And you look at the numbers, you look at how much Kroger, this food giant, how much profit they put into their pocket over the pandemic, how much PPE money they got, how much, just how much they've benefited during this pandemic. And it's much like our billionaire class. We've allowed them to, and not just allowed, we've gotten used to and accustomed to them taking all the benefits and sharing none of it actually trickling down. This again is one of those things that the trickle down people, the supply side, the voodoo Reaganomic folks would tell you, this is how it's supposed to work. Company makes a lot of money off of the hard work of the dedicated employees, and they reward them because it will filter down. Problem is, never seems to filter down. It filters down to the CEOs and the executives. They line their pockets quite well, thank you very much. And in fact, the reality is the company even knows this. And I alluded to this with Kim there a moment ago, where they had a slide presentation saying that they know that their employees are benefiting from all of the social programs, food stamps, LIHEAP, school lunch programs, you name it. All of the things that we do to make sure that the working poor that they can at least survive. And for me, it's one of these things where why should we be subsidizing an extraordinarily profitable company like Kroger with our hard-earned tax dollars that's meant to help people who truly need it? Now, look, these workers need it, but they shouldn't have to. And I go back to, and I brought up my grandmother. My grandmother worked in a very small department store, Uncle Bill's in Cleveland, they're 25 plus years. And that job was full of people who worked full-time, had excellent benefits, had retirement security, and made a good living out of this little department store. And throughout Cleveland, all of these little department stores, and even the bigger ones, were unionized. They were all, throughout the entire sector, were all unionized. And they all paid reasonable wages. They all had decent benefits. They all had health care and retirement and vacation and all of this stuff. Things that generation built that their kids, my parents' generation and me, began taking for granted. And the employer class clawed it all back. And this is what Kroger has done masterfully. So to see the kind of work that my grandmother did, she was a cashier. She was head cashier, and she was the union steward for a number of years there, and was able to make a good living at it. To see those jobs now be poverty wage jobs where those folks would potentially be homeless is insane. And shows a couple of things. One, corporate power is just out of control. Two, union density in this country pathetically low, and as we found out today, actually falling. And three, the fact that work doesn't seem to to be able to lift us up. Now, I put out a tweet today that said, $7.25 an hour times 40 hours times 52 weeks, about 15 grand a year. Who can possibly survive on that? And I had a comment, well, nobody's supposed to survive on that. It's a job. Jobs are supposed to make lives better. That's simple. Every job, I don't care what you do, is deserving of dignity and respect. And we do that through wages. We do that through conditions. So I see these folks on strike and I go, how do we help them? And I call out to the good people in Denver, to our listeners in Denver and throughout Colorado. I call out to the Democrats in Denver, to the Colorado Democrats, to the Adams County Democrats. I call out to them. You know what? Why don't you have your next meeting on the picket line? Why don't you get all of the Democrats in that area to show up on the picket line? Because here's what's going on. Here's how bad our laws are. A judge just issued a restraining order saying they can't have more than 10 workers on that picket line. Because, it makes people feel bad. This is where the community, this is where you, Democrats, and I'm talking to you, and Democrats in any community where there's a strike, you should be out on that picket line by the thousands. There should be 10,000 people at each of those supermarkets saying, negotiate with these workers or we're not coming back to shop. We're coming back to fill this place up with people and stop things from happening. And yeah, you can have your restraining order, you can file your injunctions, but you can't arrest all of us. You can't arrest 10,000 people. Now they'll try, but this is what our history is. And the reason why yesterday talking about the auto light strike was so important, because this is what the community did back then. This is what organized groups did. Every labor group in the city should have their union meeting on a picket line there. Every Democrat, and I'm calling you, Democrats, by all means, get out on that picket line. And when you do, contact me and we will have you on the program to talk about it, because it is that important. This is the kind of urgency that I'm talking about. We need to have people active, engaged, motivated, and in the streets saying, okay, our labor laws are broken. Okay. We need to rebuild that. We need to rebuild that from the ground up. Because understand, every person that works in that supermarket lives in that community. That's someone's son or daughter, someone's mother or father, someone's wife or sister, or brother or sister. That's someone. And they need the support of each individual in that community. And that's not just in Denver. That's in any workplace in this country. And until we regain that mentality, and this is where I've been frustrated for a long time, because, we've sliced and diced ourselves up into whatever category we are. We're hyphen American. Put whatever you want before that. How come we aren't worker American? That's what we are first. That's how we support our families. And I think once we start viewing ourselves through the lens of that we're working people first, that maybe some of the barriers will be torn down and maybe we can start working together across some of those other hyphens. Maybe we can start going, you know what, we want conditions better for everyone. It's insane that a CEO makes 909 times what the median wage of a worker at that company makes. That is insane, especially given a time in some of our lifetimes. There are people still alive today. I know it's hard to believe, but there are still people alive today who remember when a CEO was only paid 20 times what the median wage of a worker was. I know, hard to believe, because we've been so trained to believe, well, there are oligarchs, there are captains of industry, there are titans of industry, and we've been sold this ridiculous notion that we have to do this in a bipartisan way. Look, you know how we do this in a bipartisan way? Agree with us, and we'll be bipartisan. We want good wages. We want family-sustaining jobs. We want dignity and respect. We demand. Because again, nothing by these companies has ever been given. It's always been fought for and demanded. There are no benevolent employers. There's some good ones. I'm not saying there aren't, but there are no benevolent ones. They don't bestow things upon people. And this idea, all you have to do is, well, you just have to work harder. All you have to do is, get an education. And I know lots of people who have degrees who are struggling to make ends meet. I know lots of really smart people who bad things have happened to over the years. Tons of jobs have gone away, and they've lost what they had. Where we are in this moment, and this is what's infuriating, where we are economically with the massive inequality that we see is, well, because of policies that we've allowed to have pushed down our throats. Because of politicians who have been bought and sold. The fact that we don't have, and this is why I'm calling on the Democrats in the Denver area to get out there. Get on that picket line. Every elected official should be there. They should be like Jamal Bowman. They should be getting arrested on that picket line. If anybody's going to listen, seeing a state representative or a state senator or a congressman or even a senator getting arrested on a picket line, I think that would send a message. And the reality is I go back to my friend Ann Feeney, who passed away not too long ago. Her one album, Have You Been to Jail for Justice? That brings us back to those moments. You think of John Lewis, Good Trouble. Are you willing to stand up for your neighbor, for your friend, for your family member, so that their children can eat and thrive and survive? This is the moment that we're in. And the history of this country and what built what we take for granted is this kind of grassroots, boots on the ground kind of organizing. This kind of militancy of working class people to say we're not going to take it anymore. In this country, we are the wealthiest country in the history of civilization at its wealthiest moment, with extremely unique opportunities that we don't take advantage of. We keep hearing from the Joe Manchins of the world, oh, well, we can't afford that. We got to get our financial house in order. We got to worry about the debt. Oh, well, sorry, those poor kids, we can't get them health care because we got to worry about the debt. But when it comes to giving tax breaks to corporate America, nobody seems to care about that. You got Joe freaking Manchin saying, oh, we got to get our tax code right. Yeah, where have you been? Where's the proposal to undo all the horrible stuff that the defeated former guy did? Oh, that's right. You want bipartisanship. The people who rammed through that tax cut, like thieves in the night, you expect them. You expect them to come with you. You expect 10 of them who wouldn't vote for your voter bill. No, you really thought, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that he really believed that there was going to be 10 Republicans who were going to come on board with him. They didn't, and they're not going to. Because ultimately this is there are no win-wins here. There are just degrees of loss. And working people have continued to lose decade after decade. And I don't care if you did okay. Still saddled with a lifetime of student loan debt. I know people who are doing pretty well. Still got huge bills in student loan debt to pay. Because we have done a masterful job in this country of redistributing wealth from working people to wealthy people. And this Kroger situation is exactly that. These are people we called heroes. These are people we called essential. People thanked them for coming to work so that there could be groceries during the pandemic. Loved them. Then we turned on them. And Kim Cordova, hit on it. There are people that spit on us, slap us, call us names all over because of their frustration. This is a moment where, as a community, we need to come together and treat these people like heroes. And I say this every time there's that hero dynamic. When we slap that title on a group or on a person. How are we going to treat them after we've given them that title? During the pandemic, they're great, they're wonderful. And now 14% of them are homeless. 3/4 of them are suffering food insecurity. Huge percentages of them are a paycheck away from being homeless. Well, that's just their problem. They're lazy. They should get better educated. But I thought they were heroes. What happened to the hero thing? Same thing with our soldiers coming back. We put them on pedestals until they need something. Every generation, I just mentioned John Fields a minute ago. How long did it take to get the Zakarin bill pushed through to take care of the 9/11 responders? Again, hero. How'd we treat them? And so should I be surprised that these workers are being screwed over by this multi-state behemoth? No, I'm not surprised by it. It's who they are. Am I surprised that they know the condition of their workers, that they know the poverty levels of the wages that they pay and do nothing about it? Absolutely not. Walmart's been doing it for decades. All of these big box, these massive conglomerates who've been getting away with, they all know. And they do it because they can. Because again, we're so divided. A Walmart worker calls me tomorrow and says, hey, we're going to be marching in front of the local Walmart for better wages, hours, and conditions. I'm joining them. And I'm pulling everybody I can with me. I don't shop at Walmart. I haven't been to a Walmart in over 20 years. But you'll see me marching to make sure that those workers get the dignity and respect that they deserve. And we need to return to that. We've been trained like Pavlovian dogs to think we're just consumers. It's all about the individual. And look how well we've been screwed over the last 40, 50 years. They say our generation and these generations aren't joiner generations. Our grandparents, they were joiners. They were joiners for a reason. Because they understood the concept of solidarity. They understood the concept of standing together and working together and demanding together. That's the part of this that's important. You see these huge profits on Wall Street. You see these CEOs with obscene salaries who pay less of a tax rate than the people they're cheating out and work. Because, they get their money differently. Because we've created loopholes and different avenues to shield money and all kinds of stuff for the wealthy. But that person who bagged your groceries, that person who was working at the checkout counter, the person who stocked the shelves at this King Super place, they pay on every dime that they earn. There's no cheating for them, and they don't want to cheat. They don't want to be the CEO. They don't want to make a killing. They want to make a living. They want to survive and have their work pay. And I don't think that's too much to ask. I certainly don't. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day the Flint Women's Emergency Brigades were founded. Genora Johnson, a socialist, was a main leader of the Women's Auxiliary Number 10 throughout the strike. A different kind of auxiliary, it built the leadership skills of women through classes in labor history and public speaking. It also set up a first aid station and child care center, raised strike funds, and walked the picket lines. The Women's Auxiliary was transformed through its actions at the Battle of Bull Run when the women put their bodies between the strikers and the police. According to Janet Hazzett, the women moved beyond supporting the strike to participating in it. 50 women signed up the next day. By the end of the strike, over 300 women had joined. the women adopted an official uniform of red berets and red armbands. They were armed with clubs to smash factory windows when police gassed the sit-downers. Their participation in the strike was heroic, and their work continued after the victory. They sought to represent the interests of women auto workers, who often found co-workers less than welcoming and experienced sexual harassment and occupational discrimination at the hands of supervision. Many women auto workers formed the core leadership of several chapters. Historian Nancy Gabin notes that this was not always the appropriate arena for advocacy, saying, quote, "By encouraging women workers to participate in the auxiliaries, the UAW abdicated its responsibility to these workers." However, Johnson emphasized, it was a radical change to give women a right to participate in discussions with their husbands, with other union members, with other women, to express their views. That was a radical change for those women at that time. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, shout out to the Denver area Democrats. You need to get out on a picket line. If they're going to block the workers from being there, that's where the community needs to step in. And Dems, it's an opportunity. You want to talk the talk. It's time to find Obama's comfortable shoes and start walking the walk. Just my thoughts. But again, I want to go back to that piece of, this company knows how bad the wages are. They know what they're doing, and they're doing what they're doing by absolute choice. And here to share some thoughts on the memo that was leaked to them on just this, I've asked Jordan Zakarin to come talk with us. Jordan is the media producer over at More Perfect Union. They do incredible work. Check out their website, perfectunion.us. Jordan, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, thanks as always for having me.
So I'm looking at this strike that's going on, and we've been talking about it most of the day. Look, you got over 8,000 people on strike because they're poverty wages. The UFCW did this great survey, found 14% of their people are homeless. 3/4 of them are food insecure, and virtually every other bit in between that show these are crappy wages. But we now find out that Kroger, they already knew this. You didn't even need the UFCW to do that.
Yeah, I think simple math probably told them without even having to survey their own workers, right? If you're paying so much below what the living wage is, people are going to be struggling. But someone who used to be with the company leaked to us a document that they helped put together in corporate communications department. That was they showed it to executives in 2018. It was based on fourth quarter 2017 survey they had done of their own workers. And it said basically in plain English that the quote is just, I'm going to get the quote for you. It says, so the quote says, most employees are considered to be living in poverty and need state aid, as in food stamps, free school lunch, etc., just to get by. And it said it in plain English. And then the numbers were pretty awful. They focus a lot on Ohio because that's where Kroger is based in Cincinnati. 1 in 5 employees were on food stamps. The company, the third most workers on SNAP benefits. Just behind Walmart and McDonald's, not really the company you want to keep there. They looked at what the living wage was. It wasn't even close to what they were paying. It's saying in Ohio you needed to have like $15 an hour for a 2-bedroom apartment, kind of at minimum, and they were not paying anywhere near that. Still today, the average median pay is $12 an hour or something like that at Kroger chain. They in 2020 they gave hero pay for about 2 months, took it back, and then when a few cities tried to create ordinances, or they did create ordinances that said, look, you need to pay people in these sort of positions better. You got to give them extra money right now, given the hazard. They literally closed down the stores. They robbed communities of their grocery stores because they didn't want to pay people an extra $2 an hour. So they've known what they've been doing for a really long time. And to see it written out there, just very stark, was pretty incredible. It said that basically, like, we know this is the case. We know that like people are not making the median. We know that people are struggling. They even said in our stores where people do make more money, they live better. There's less turnover. People are more satisfied. But so again, they knew that paying people better would be better. They still didn't do it.
But here's the thing, they don't care because, and I've said this for years, there are no benevolent corporations. There are no good guys. The only time you get things is when you demand them. And I got to wonder how much of this is, the fact that, there have been all of these assaults on organized labor over the years. And in the grocery industry, especially, you've seen the number of unionized grocery stores basically going away and being destroyed, which is pulling down the wages for everybody else. So this is the quote unquote free market being used in a systematic way to destroy wages.
I mean, if you look at they own so many different chains. King Soopers is the one in Colorado where they're striking, but Kroger owns so many. Ralph's, just like, I can't even name them all. And they're the fourth biggest private employer in the United States. 465,000 people they employ. I mean, that is like a small nation, right? That is, there's some states, I think, with just about that many people. And so when you dominate the space like that, right? In Colorado, there's a strike, and just 80 stores are on strike. They can do a lot more, at King Super. They can dominate and they can change, the wages, the prevailing wage. And so when they keep it down, they crush it. And, in their most recent offer to the union, or at the beginning of this, they wanted them to take split shifts. They wanted to make it even harder for them to get hours to get the benefits. They continued to try and make it even worse, even though they knew how bad it was.
I mean, that's insane. And one of the things that I've called for today, and this is where, I guess my labor background, makes me a little more militant, and the history that I've learned over the years makes me, kind of think of the old days. But I look at the fact that there's a restraining order right now on those workers. They can't have more than 10 people on a picket line. I've called on the local Democrats, the Denver Democrats, the Adams County Democrats, and the Colorado Democrats to have an event. Have an event on those picket lines. Everybody in the community should be showing up. They can't arrest 10,000 people if you get that many people to show up. But we need that kind of buy-in from Democrats at least. Because if you're going to talk the talk, borrow Obama's comfortable shoes and start walking.
Well, it would be nice for a lot of Democrats there to start. And a lot of state legislators have spoken out, and Michael Bennet, the senator, had put out a tweet and visited the picket line. But Governor Jared Polis, who is a Democrat, a very wealthy one, he's up for re-election but hasn't said a word. John Hickenlooper, the governor, former governor, now senator, very wealthy as well, hasn't said a word. So, it would be a good start for them to say anything, but even before they even show up, they haven't even said a word about it. And, it's when Democrats get their, asses handed to them in November, they're going to wonder, what happened. And, it's not because people like Republicans. It's because, the Democrats didn't do anything.
See, this is one of these moments, and I don't know if you saw the story that Jamal Bowman, the congressman from New York, got arrested today at the Capitol during one of the voting rights protests. To me, that shows that this guy believes that there's some bit of urgency on the voting rights matter, that it was so important he went down to that protest and became a part of it. This is the same kind of thing. If you believe inequality in this country is a problem and it is a crisis at crisis level, if you believe that we need an economy that works for people, I want to see politicians and leaders and folks acting with a little bit more urgency. I want to see labor leaders acting with a lot more urgency.
Yeah, I think it's there for, this better than me, but years just beaten down and forced to take bad deals and, just trying to keep their dwindling numbers. There's a new energy for sure, right? Like after COVID, I think a lot of young people, I always mention the Buffalo workers, the Starbucks workers, and then everywhere. I talked to them in Boston, those in Seattle, Mesa, Memphis, a lot of really young people who are more militant because they have nothing to lose. And so I think that there is that aspect of like a new solidarity being formed by people that really do have nothing to lose, especially as, workers that had worked for a lot of years, maybe they want to keep their retirements and move forward and retire as that sort of group of folks who worked many years and deserve everything they got moves forward into the next stage in their lives. I think there will be a greater militancy and a greater boycott.
No, we absolutely need it. Now, what do you? I guess I'm looking at this memo and I'm reading through it. And I'll be honest, it's quite shocking, but not surprising. What's the been reaction that you've gotten from that? Are you getting the kind of surprise or oh my gosh? Or are you getting like my reaction? Yeah, okay. This is what they do. What kind of reaction have you been getting?
I think it's some people were like doubted that it was real because it was so blunt. And we didn't put out all the pages, but it certainly is real, and it lots of information on there about just how poorly they paid, and none of it was put together. They didn't put that memo together to like, hey, here's a problem we need to fix. It was, how do we keep people from revolting? How do we keep people from like being super mad and having this get out to the public? And again, I don't think there's been a lot of surprise. I don't think anyone thinks that the company was paying poverty wages and didn't realize people were living in poverty, right? But and that's almost part of the problem, right? Like, we've gotten a great response to the thing, and hopefully it put a little heat on Kroger in the negotiations with Kim, who was Kim Cordova, who just had as a guest, who's awesome. Hopefully it helped a little bit. But it's one of those things where we come to expect it, and maybe we're a little numb to it, and we just accept that that's what capitalism is, and they're going to try and crush us, and they're going to try to trust their workers because that's smart investing, I guess, or smart business stewardship. And I think that's something we need to break as well. I mean, like, Warren Buffett just bought a ton of Kroger stock. BlackRock owns a lot of Kroger stock. All these blue chip hedge funds and these like wizard investors, this summer they were calling Kroger a great investment, though. It's an opportunity to make a lot of money. And so I think for a long time, that's all the media would ever cover. Oh, this is a great company that you can buy some stock and make some cash on. Yeah. And so maybe public becoming more aware of this stuff. They're seeing this, perhaps. People will, a lot of people were participating in the boycott in Colorado. I don't know if that unfortunate restraining order changes that, but I think people are at least waking up to it.
That is the hope. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Jordan Zakarin. He's a media producer over at More Perfect Union, their website, perfectunion.us. You can check out their website. We'll get links out on social media. You can check out Jordan's work. Now, today the Bureau of Labor Statistics came out with their numbers, and union density has dropped down to 10.3%. Now, in the public sector and in the private sector, there's parity. It used to be, the private sector had, a lot more, and then that began to dwindle down. The sad reality is in this last year, the public sector took a massive hit. Of the 241,000 jobs, union jobs that are now not there, 191,000 of them were in the public sector. Any thoughts? Any comments?
Well, you hope that it's a temporary hit, because a lot of places had to lay off workers, right? 2020, 2021, a lot of public governments and whatnot had to lay people off because they were had budget crunches. Now there's a lot of money going to states through the American Rescue Plan and through the bipartisan infrastructure deal, as flawed as it is. And I think it's really important that, and it's something we're looking at More Perfect Union, making sure that money goes to union jobs, making sure that if we mentioned public, if a government is investing a lot of money, like say Georgia, putting a lot of money towards Rivian, the electric car maker that's going to be opening up a $5 billion factory there, those jobs are union jobs. And I think that private organizing, there's a lot that needs to be done, and a lot that can be improved upon, and the new militancy that's happening. But I think that it behooves us, when you look at the public sector, to really say, this needs to be something that Democrats demand. When Build Back Better seemed like a still possibility, they were going to give higher tax credits to electric vehicles that were built by union labor. Of course, Joe Manchin didn't like that because West Virginia has a non-union, I think it was like a Nissan or Toyota factory or something like that. So I think that's a big part of it. Like, the next year, as this money gets doled out, a lot of jobs need to be created that are in unions, whether it's building bridges, fixing roads, in a vein of FDR. I think we know what states that's going to be more likely to happen in. But, I'm in New York. We got to hold the governor's feet to the fire, make sure that those jobs go to union workers.
Yeah, and when the infrastructure money starts flowing out, and it's beginning to happen, especially here in the spring, we make sure that they abide by the rules that are still in there, because prevailing wage is part of that. And that's going to mean good family sustaining wage jobs when we rebuild our infrastructure. And for me, it's not just about rebuilding the infrastructure. It's about rebuilding our economy in a way that the economy actually benefits working people. What's the point of having an economy if the CEO is making 909 times what the worker is making, and they're worried, and the workers are worried about being homeless and working in a supermarket being hungry? That's insane to me.
Yeah, I'm biased because I am a long time working in the media, but I think there is hopefully a shift, right? There's been a lot of talk. Steve Greenhouse had a great story about how union journalism is sort of making a comeback. Labor journalism is on the upswing, and the questions we ask of corporations need to change, right? It's obviously it would be great if Democrats, if they pass some version of the Build Back Better, they get the PRO Act versions, piece of that in there. That would be really helpful. NLRB is doing a lot of good stuff. Well, hopefully that continues with Jennifer Abruzzo. But the conversation needs to change to not just, oh, did these people make their their quarterly earnings? Were they able to hit the dividend number? Were they able to do the stock buyback? But did they treat their workers well? The questions that should be going to Warren Buffett, not about like, oh, what's the best investment? What's the great grand wizard, our Mr. Wizard of Omaha? What is the great investment tip? But like, are the companies you own and invest in treating their workers well?
Yeah,
and
the
do
Oracle,
you allow them to unionize?
The Oracle of Omaha.
Right, sure. Yeah, Oracle. Yeah. So it should be one of those things where, we're not just talking about, media is not just made for people, upper middle class folks. It should be asking questions about how people treat their workers. And, had the kids at Starbucks, I call them kids, I'm like 10 years older than them, but had the Starbucks workers not started unionizing, people wouldn't be asking Howard Schultz all about that. They'd be asking him about whatever phony nonprofit he has.
No,
and
you're absolutely right.
So I think that these questions need to be asked.
No, you're spot on, accurate on that. And as I'm looking at this, to your point, we don't demand enough of these corporations, and we don't hold them accountable enough. And maybe that starts with labor journalists again, because I remember a time when I delivered the Cleveland Press as a kid. The Cleveland Press had a labor page. There were newspapers that had labor reporters. Stephen Greenhouse was a labor reporter for the Times. Philip Dine, he was a reporter for the one, I think, in St. Louis. There were a number of labor reporters that had national beats, and those are all gone.
I guess if there's one silver lining to the sheer size of the income gap, right, of the 1% versus everyone else, is that everyone else they read what they see. They see all these things about different workers being crushed, or union busting, or people just having their bosses change their schedule on them last second, or scams that are happening to people, and they relate to it, right? It's everyone's in the same boat. And you just got to be able to tell these stories. And I think I'm proud to be and this is not to be an infomercial for More Perfect Union, but it's a matter of just telling them and letting people speak. And if you ask those questions of corporations, Kroger, one thing that the guy was bringing back to Kroger, the person who leaked the thing to us, was saying is that the same year that this document was produced, they began their zero waste, or whatever they called it, where they wanted to donate food to liquid food shelters and communities, and take food waste from the stores and make sure homeless people got it, which is all well and good, but they use that as a way to avoid hard questions about are your workers the ones in the shelters, right? And so I think by exposing this stuff, hopefully these harder questions are being asked.
Yeah, and we also need a tax code that punishes, if you're going to pay someone 909 times, $20-some million, I'm sorry, that's ludicrous, especially if you're getting tax dollars to subsidize your workforce.
It's where we haven't got to the point where they can add. There was a debate over how much money they could give the IRS to go after these people, they're hiding their money. So now we're debating whether or not we should enforce tax law, which is pretty wild.
Well, crazy times we live in. Look, you got Joe Manchin from a former union state, one where the cradle of unionization, and where some of the most bloody labor wars were fought. Fighting over union work. It's crazy to me, and I hope that we eventually come around to some bit of sanity and some bit of reality. And it only starts by the work that you guys do over there at More Imperfect Union, and all of our friends who are doing labor reporting. Again, if you want to check out Jordan's work, perfectunion.us is the website. We'll get links out on the social media. Jordan, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
I appreciate it, Rick. Thanks for having me on.
Jordan Zakarin, make sure you check out his work, perfectunion.us. I'm going to take a quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1986. That was the first time Dr. Martin Luther King Day was observed as a national holiday. A powerful voice for civil rights, Dr. King was assassinated in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, while standing on the second floor of the Lorraine Motel. He was in Memphis standing up for the rights of black garbage collectors. Dr. King gave his life supporting those fighting for union recognition. Throughout his work as a civil rights leader, Dr. King spoke powerfully of the importance of unions. Addressing a group of Teamsters in 1967, he said, "Union recognition meant the real beginning. Union meant strength, and recognition meant the employer's acknowledgement of that strength." Perhaps his most stirring reflections on the labor movement came in a speech he delivered to the AFL-CIO in Springfield, Illinois in 1965. King said, "The two most dynamic movements that reshaped the nation during the past 3 decades are the labor and civil rights movements. Our combined strength is potentially enormous. We have not used a fraction of it for our own good or for the need of society as a whole. If we make the war on poverty a total war, if we seek higher standards for all workers for an enriched life, we have the ability to accomplish it, and our nation has the ability to provide it. If our two movements unite their social pioneering initiative 30 years from now, people will look back on this day and honor those who had the vision to see the full possibilities of modern society and the courage to fight for their realization. On that day, the brotherhood of man, undergirded by economic security, will be a thrilling and creative reality."
Uh, you know, again, it goes back to the beginning of this assault on unions in the Trump administration. We're now seeing the results of that initiative, right? And we have to continue to, I guess, intentionally build our unions, as best we can and as quickly and as fast as we can.
Yeah, now I'm not going to give Trump the kind of credit that some will want him to get for this assault on union membership. Look, this has been 50 years of right-wing assault on working people. This has been 50 years of supply-side voodoo Reaganomics and neoliberalism that's played all into this, and an aggressive employer class that sought to divide and conquer us. But Trump is responsible for a little bit of it. I'll give him a little credit.
Yeah, I'm just speaking in terms of my union. We've had a 27-year consecutive years of increase, right? And in 2018 is when we began to see our numbers go down for the first time, right? And that was right after those executive orders. So not wanting to give them credit, I'm just saying that those initiatives is what began to dismantle my union.
Let's talk about your union. You went through the 4 years of Trump and all of the assaults, the 3 executive orders that basically diminished your ability to represent people in the workplace, took away time to investigate grievances and doing all that stuff. Has this administration gone and undone most of what the previous administration done? Have they done anything? Where do you put it?
We're really proud of what this administration has done for us. President Biden promised to be the most pro-union president, and so far he's kept his promise, right? He formed the White House Task Force on Workers' Organization, Organizing and Empowerment, rather, headed by Vice President Kamala Harris, right? And Labor Secretary Marty Walsh, to bolster union membership. The administration also has directed agencies to take steps to promote unions and ensure that workers are fully informed of their union rights, right? And so we've seen some good things happen. We highlighted, at least 10 great things that has happened under this administration for this first year, right? As you know, the third year in office, President Biden rescinded those Trump era executive orders.
Yeah, the first year, right almost day one, right?
Right, day 3. That's right. And we've seen some very good victories, under this administration.
But here we are. We're looking at these numbers, and with all of the talk of the last year of all the strikes and all the union activity and all of the want of working people to join and form unions, because look, we're in in an incredible moment of workers showing their dissatisfaction by 4.5 million people leaving jobs in what they're calling the Great Resignation, the enormous number of strikes of the last year. And I would argue those 4.5 million people, had they had union representation, they wouldn't be quitting jobs. They'd be out on picket lines striking. How do we get those folks unions, especially after 40, 50 years of an assault on labor law and an assault on people's ability to join and form unions?
Well, I think it goes back, and you're right, it goes back to the laws, right? The laws that prevent workers, who want to have a union from, prevent them from joining or forming, one in their own workplace, which keep union membership and the workers' pay artificially low, right? This is an issue that Congress must take up, right? We must pass the PRO Act. I think this is what we're going to have to see in order to see some improvements there. So I think it's the outdated laws and those type of things that causes this, Rick, and we have to call on Congress to fix this.
No, this is the problem. The House did its job. It passed the PRO Act. But it's gone to the Senate where progress goes to die. It's gone to the Senate where all of the things that we, the working people, need and want and have fought for, it's where it goes to die, because there's this view that we need bipartisanship, Everett. We need some kind of bipartisanship. I go, no, bipartisanship is the death of all progress, because you're never going to get the kind of bipartisan the Joe Manchins of the world want, because the other side, and I'll say this flat out, you don't have to agree, but the Republican Party hates working people and especially hates unions, which is why you're never going to get them to come along. There's never going to be bipartisanship on this issue with the current Republican Party.
Right. And that is the problem. You're right. House did that part. And now, we're calling upon the Senate, and that's what it's going to take in order for it to happen. We really need it. And you're probably right. We probably would never get the bipartisanship that we need in order for workers to see the laws change as it relates to joining and forming unions. But that's exactly what needs to happen. The American people need to call upon the Senate to make sure that this occurs, because it's only right that workers have that right.
it's not even a matter of being right or wrong. It's a matter of it's what we the people want. Overwhelmingly, the polling numbers, and you wrote about this in your piece over at the Hill, overwhelmingly workers want to join unions, especially in this moment. Unions haven't seen such popularity since, I think you said sometime in the mid 60s.
60s, right?
This is that moment where we the people are demanding our representatives do our job and do what we want, and yet it's not happening under this guise of bipartisanship, which, again, I don't see the Republican Party in this moment ever coming around to. Now, there used to be pro-labor Republicans. I remember them. I'm old enough to remember a couple of them. They're just not around today.
Right. Totally agree with you. But we're seeing some uptick. When we look at the Amazon workers in Bessemer, Alabama, right? Getting another bite at the apple, if you will, right? After the National Labor Relations Board found that Amazon participated in union busting tactics to pressure workers to vote against the union, RWDSU, has and will continue to have AFGE support in this fight. I went down to engage the workers myself. We are dispatching more labor and resources on the ground. When we look at Starbucks, right? Workers in Buffalo made history.
Yeah.
As they became the first employer to unionize. I'm looking forward to seeing additional stores unionize to keep up the momentum and continue standing up for these to these billion-dollar companies, right? And corporations, and demand fairness, demand dignity, and demand respect in the workplace. So we are seeing some of that, and we have to begin to educate more, right? And be an eye shot of every community that is, letting them know that you need unionized workers in your community. Because even when it comes to faith initiatives and churches and those type of things, they need to understand that they need to be standing up for workers' rights and for workers' ability to organize. Because, I pastored the church myself over 30 years. And I taught on tithing, and this is what I know. I'd rather have a person tithing with $20 an hour versus $10 an hour, right? And that's what union wages do. It increases the person's ability to have a livable wage, to take care of his family, and those types of things. And so, we have to get our communities involved, in making sure that people understand the necessity of unionized workers.
No, it's interesting you bring that up, because I grew up in an era where I grew up in the Catholic Church in the 70s, where it was all about peace and social justice, and regularly you saw priests walking on picket lines. It seems the faith community has walked away from workers in sort of a way for this argument of the prosperity gospel, and we're all somehow going to be rich and we're going to be the owner class. How has that happened as someone who has been a pastor?
Well, it goes back to education. We did leave, for some reason, the faith community left that lane, okay? And we have to get back to educating, as to why social justice is so important, why economic justice is so important. We have to educate all over again. And this is the thing, though, is that we can't just show up when it's time to vote for a union, right? We can't just show up because then they see us as a politician. We come every 4 years, right? And then we don't see you no more until it's time to vote again. We have to continuously educate, our parishioners, about why unions are important. We have to let them see, how important it is to have a job that pays you $20 an hour versus a job that pays you $7.25 an hour. We have to educate, and that's something that we haven't done very well. And because of that, I think that the faith community, they don't feel empowered anymore because we're not teaching those things in the churches like we should.
No, I'm with you. I've often argued we need to have the church of collective bargaining, where we talk about the wonders of collective bargaining and how community is part of this. And I'm right on there with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Dr. Everett Kelly. He's the national president for the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE. AFGE.org, their website, if you want to check out the work that they do. But here's the thing, and this is where it comes back down to community. It's not just about leaders. It's not just about you, Everett. I know you're a good guy. I know you're a good union guy. You're out there fighting. It's about every rank and file person. It's about every person who has a job. And we're in this weird moment and maybe you'll agree with me. We're in this moment where we're slicing and dicing ourselves up into categories. We're conservatives, we're liberals, we're white, we're black, male, female, whatever. We've divided ourselves up nicely, much that would make Jay Gould very happy, that he could easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. I say the one thing that unites us is that we're all workers. We can all have our subcategories, but being a worker is the one thing that we all are. And I think the one thing we should all be able to agree on. And in that world, we should be fighting for the same things. We can fight for all the other stuff, absolutely. But the one thing, better wages, hours, conditions, better opportunities for our children, safe working conditions, all of those things are things we should be fighting for right now.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. And we gotta get people to understand, why labor should be involved. When you start thinking in terms of, Dr. King, right? He stood there with unionized laborers, right? And he talked about, even before that, that we must seize the moment. We must take advantage of the fierce urgency of now, right? And I think that the labor movement have to take advantage of the fierce urgency of now. We look out and we see, just as you said, so many divides, right? I mean, we divide ourselves, among race, among gender, among so many things. But we all have one thing in common. We are working America, right? And we need to take advantage of this opportunity, to really build on union and stabilize our community, stabilize our country, and America by doing so. And I think that's where we have to go.
So this is where it comes back to you, Everett, as a leader of a national union and the other leaders of the national unions, because you hit it on the head. I'm not seeing the kind of urgency from our national leaders that maybe it's there and I'm not seeing it, but I'm not seeing the kind of urgency that I'm seeing on the ground of workers who are leaving jobs by the millions, of people who are wanting and asking for organization. How do you guys do better? How do you do more?
Well, what we have done, we have started a campaign called our Now Organizing program, right? Now, it's more than just an organizing program. It's a program to reinvigorate our union and help us capitalize on the positive momentum that we got, because we got momentum, right? We have 5 pillars that touch every aspect of what we do for our members, right? First of all, we say that, if we're going to be effective as a union, right, we have to aggressively, that's pillar number 1, increase recruitment. We have to do that, right? Pillar number 2 is that we got to organize not just for numbers, but for power. I think that labor unions have to realize that they are more powerful than they realize, and we got to start on the ground floor organizing for power. And then we got to win back all that we lost and more, right? And the 4th pillar is that we got to strengthen our finances when it comes to labor unions, so that they're not faced with situations where they're about bankrupt, right? And then we got to restore the trust of our membership, right? So that everybody can believe in us all over again. Because that was a time when people believed in unions, but for some reason, we have not educated enough that people will now trust union leadership, believe in union leadership, and we have to get back to the basics.
There you go, Everett. I appreciate you taking some time for us. Great talking with you. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon. Keep up the great work. I hope people will check out the article. We'll get links out on social media. But Everett Kelly, I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. Always.
Good stuff. And we'll make sure we get links out on social media, how you can check out Dr. Everett Kelly's piece. Remember, he's the national president for the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, AFGE.org, their website. Again, we'll get links out there. Love to hear your thoughts. Anything of this make you go, hey, maybe I'd like to join a union? We'd like to hear from you. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. But we're in this moment, like I said. We're in a moment where we can make a difference. Things can be better for working people. All we have to do is band together, stand up, speak out, and demand more from our elected leaders. And it starts with Joe Manchin, starts with Kirsten Sinema, but it's every one of them. It's that simple. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Remember, follow us on social media at Rick Smith Show. On Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of that. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Right before our eyes, an invaluable American species is fast disappearing from view. Cartoonus americanus. These are newspaper cartoonists who've long delighted readers and infuriated power elites. And there's nothing natural about their sudden decline. It's not the result of a dwindling talent pool, and certainly not due to a lack of political targets. Rather, what's happening is that their media habitat is being intentionally destroyed. Around the start of the 20th century, some 2,000 newspapers featured their own full-time cartoonists. But in just the last decade, those healthy media environments have shriveled. So now, only a couple of dozen newspapers have these vibrant artistic journalists on staff. One major reason is that most U.S. papers have been gobbled up by profiteering hedge funds that have merged, purged, and plundered these essential local sources of news and democratic discourse. The overriding interest of these Wall Street owners is to cash out a paper's financial assets and haul off the booty to boost their personal wealth. Journalism and democracy be damned. Thus, they view cartoonists as a paycheck that can be easily diverted into their corporate pockets, dismissing the fact that enjoying good local cartoonists ranks as one of the top reasons people give for buying the paper. Note that this mass extermination is not old-school media censorship, but sleight-of-hand money censorship by the new monopolistic order of newspapering. Political cartoonists are still free to express any opinion they want, but the Wall Street system locks them out of their primary marketplace. Censorship is ugly, but eliminating paychecks, well, that's just business. This is Jim Hightower saying, yet these freewheeling spirits of the cartooning craft are inventing new ways to connect with America's strong demand for their fun and important work. To connect with them, go to editorialcartoonist.com. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you lowdowners who subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Hightower Lowdown. You know who you are. Thank you.